Chapter 17. "Leave me alone!" I screamed, my voice hoarse with terror. I shoved him out of my way and ran to my room. I turned back at the door and saw Marv glaring at me, his face a scarlet red, his features twisted in anger. I staggered into the room and shut the door behind me. I was breathing hard, blood pulsing at my temples. Why is Marv doing this to me? I asked myself. I never did anything to him. Why is he so eager to help his mother? I turned and saw Brad sitting on the edge of his bed. He looked terrible. His hair had fallen down over his forehead. His eyes were red-rimmed and bloodshot. He held up a deck of cards in both hands. "Paul, pick a card," he said. "Any card." "I'm not really in the mood for card tricks," I replied, still struggling to catch my breath. I glanced at the wall clock. "It's after midnight, Brad. You've got to help me," he cried, jumping to his feet. "I've been working on these card tricks for hours. Before that, I spent hours in the math notebook I'm doing for extra credit. I've got to get these tricks to work." A terrified sob escaped his throat. I don't want to be eaten." I shivered. "Neither do I murmured. "Marv has messed both of us up. He's ruined our chances." "But we can't come back," Brad declared. "If we work hard, we won't finish at the bottom. We can't." He raised the deck of cards to me. I picked a card. I held Brad with his card tricks for another 2 hours. Finally, we had to quit. My eyes were burning. I was so tired I couldn't tell a club from a diamond. All the while, I kept glancing at the fresh box of balloons on my desk. I knew I should practice my balloon animals. "I'll practice tomorrow night," I promised myself. "I'll study hard and work on my molecule and make balloon animals. And maybe I will survive." Yawning, I set my alarm clock, fell into bed, and slept in a deep, dreamless sleep. I woke up early the next morning before the alarm went off. I pulled on khakis and a sweatshirt and hurried to my desk. Still sleepy, I wrote a desperate letter to my parents. I told them my teacher was a monster. I begged them to come rescue me before it was too late. Molly and Celeste had told me their letters weren't sent, but I had to try for myself. One last try. I found a slot marked "Mail" in the wall outside the front office. I dressed my envelope carefully and put a stamp on it. Then I carried it to the mail slot. No one was watching, so I slid it into the slot. The office door was open. It was still early. No one seemed to be inside. I poked my head in and gasped. The mail slot emptied into a large trash can. The girls were right. No way a letter was going to leave the school. My heart pounding, I checked the door. No one out there. I grabbed the phone off the front desk. I started to dial home. The tape messages started up before I could finish dialing. "Please hang up. Students may make outgoing calls only on holidays." Even the office phone was closed off. No way to reach my parents. I slumped upstairs to the science lab. I worked on my science project until it was time for breakfast. I hope Mrs. Mark likes it, I thought. Shaking my head, I sure hope she likes it. I finished the model that night after dinner. It was an amazing tangle of sticks and little balls. I checked it and double-checked it against the diagram in the textbook. I had to make sure it was perfect. Then I slid it carefully into its carton and closed it up tight. I passed Molly and Celeste on my way back to my room and flashed my thumbs up. Would my project impress Mrs. Mark? Would it save my life? There was only one way to find out. The next morning, I carefully carried the carton into the classroom. Mrs. Mark was sorting papers at her desk. She had just arrived. It was 15 minutes before class began. She pretended she didn't see me, kept her head down, shuffling the papers around her desk, grunting to herself. I set the carton down on the table beside her desk. "Mrs. Mark?" Finally, she glanced up at me. "You're early," she growled. I know," I stammered. I swallowed hard. Had I ever been this nervous before? This terrified in my life? "What's in the box?" she motioned with her big head. A science project, I told her. I've been working on it for days. It's a model. I did for extra credit. I hope you like it. I just open the box and show it to me, she snarled. I hesitated. Uh, if you're in a bad mood, I could come back later. I mean, open the box! She bellowed, her whole blobby face quivering. I jumped. Okay. I pulled up the flaps on the top of the carton. I worked very hard on it. It's a complicated model, I said, of a molecule. A very complicated molecule. I was so scared, I didn't even hear myself. She tapped her fat, doughy fingers on her desk. I carefully took the model out from the box and set it on her desk. Do you like it, Mrs. Mark? She stared at it. Her watery eyes bulged, and her mouth dropped open in a startled gasp. Is this a joke? She rasped. Huh? I turned and stared at the model. Oh no! I shrieked. Someone had changed it. Someone had moved everything around. It wasn't my molecule. It wasn't any molecule. The sticks and balls. It spelled out two words. You ugly.